All right, just popping out the YouTube chat, setting it to show all messages because they do that annoying thing on YouTube where they show you the popular messages. And it's like, no, I'd like to see all of them. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us again for another episode of SEO Fight Club. We have a pretty cool episode today. I'm going to be showing some new technology that came out of the SEO Tool Lab Vault. I don't normally show prototypes, but I have in the past. So you'll get to see something different today that you probably haven't seen before. But before we do, we'll go through some boilerplate. So we don't have Clint here. So if you don't know, he has a cool YouTube show called SEO This Week. You can search for it by name. He does audits and gives tactical advice and does tool reviews. And it's a cool show. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. SEO This Week. And then there's the SEO video show, and it's another great show. This one is an interview show where he interviews all the biggest personalities in our industry. So it's amazing to find out people's stories and to get insights and perspective. So if you're interested in that, check it out. It's another great show. Just found out about this one. So IMG's tester, Carolyn Holzman, has a podcast called Confessions of an SEO. She has about 16 episodes so far. They're pretty short. They're about 15 minutes each. So they're a good quick listen if you're just waiting at the bus stop or something. But check it out. It's really cool. We love supporting our community. And she's an amazing SEO tester. And so, let's find out what she wants to tell us. And it sounds like she's just getting real with it and telling you how unclean and unfancy and rough edges and uncomfortable SEO can be. And just, let's find out more. This is a cool concept. So I look forward to seeing more. Be sure to check it out. So, Lauren, are you with
Yeah,
us?
I'm
We have
with you.
we have a pretty short list. Let's
We
go ahead.
do. Well, though, not everything is on that list. So, we actually just released a new course in IMG called Profit Stacking. And that is all about how do you double your profit with the same number of website visitors. So, that's new, it's live, and every member gets access to that and every single course in IMG. Now, I think there's like more than 20. And then we just released the new SEO testing portal. So that's really exciting. And then on Tuesday, we do have an AMA with Kyle Roof. If you're in the US, that's but somewhere in your evening, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Nice. And yeah, that testing portal is open to the public. You can't see the tests, but you can see the catalog of tests. So if you want to find out what we've been working on in testing, you can go to internetmarketing.gold and browse the test catalog. It's open to the public. So today's topic are different keywords treated the same. And so we hear this, quite frequently. It like tends to come back. Oh, you don't need to uh, tune your page for Plumber Seattle because you already had it tuned for Seattle Plumber. And Lee, you were the one who, many episodes ago did the original analysis. What came out of that analysis?
Yeah, they weren't the same at all. I think if you looked at Seattle Plumber versus Plumber Seattle, if each one of them had 100 and they were identical, there should have been, 100 unique. And I think there were 150 when you combine two of them. If you added Seattle plumbing, which was another one they said, it was a duplicate. You got up to 225 URLs across the three. So they weren't the same at all.
Yeah. And so I was thinking, it's been a while. It's been about a year maybe. And so, let's repeat the analysis. And, I was so impressed by that analysis that I actually wanted software to repeat it. I thought we could learn more if we had a tool that could let us do that kind of analysis really quickly. And so today I'm going to show you that software. So let me minimize the browser. All right. So can you see the software currently?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so this is it. It's not fancy, but it does the trick. So the idea is we put in two keywords. So I might put in DUI lawyer Los Angeles. And then I'll come over here and I'll say DUI attorney Los Angeles. And so lawyer and attorney are commonly synonyms. And the general idea from the public is that, we don't need to, tune for the other one because we already got the first and Google knows they're synonyms. So I'll go ahead and run this. And it
Google
does.
also said that they're synonyms as well. So Google has also made that claim.
Yep. And so I just want to see if, Google is actually treating them the same. And so here we are. We found out that there's, 100 results for each of them. So that's as expected. But when we count up the total number of unique URLs for both, there's 117 unique URLs. So we know that there are at least 17 different search results between these two searches. And then on the indexing, we want to try to find out if they're, overlapping with the same URLs. And we know over here already that, spoiler, they largely are. But we're going to look at it in a little more detail. So 9 URLs of the top 10 for DUI lawyer Los Angeles also appear in the top 10 for DUI attorney Los Angeles. So in the top 10 on page 1, that's 90% the same indexing. Now in the top 20, it drops to 85%. And then over the top 100, it's, 83%. So largely, for the most part, they're indexing the same pages between these two. And that's really cool because that kind of means that Google knows their synonyms and they're pulling up the same pages. But then we look at how they're ranking those same pages, and the top 10 are completely different positions. One of the top 20 was the same, 3 overall. So the rankings are completely different for this keyword. And remember these values, 0%, 5%, 3%, because not all keywords are going to look like this. So largely the same pages, largely different order for those same pages. So what this is telling me is that if you tune your page for DUI lawyer Los Angeles, you also need to tune your page for DUI attorney Los Angeles if you want to be competitive for the ranking. And that makes sense to me because we know that part of the mix is exact match on page tuning. And if you exact match one, then you're neglecting the exact match tuning for the other. So obviously, if exact match is a thing, you would expect the rankings to shake up between the two keywords. And that's what the data shows. So we'll do a different one. So Seattle plumber. And then over here, Seattle plumbers. So now I'm going to go from a singular plumber to a plural plumber. And we'll run that. All right. So again, we got 100 results for both. 117. That's spooky. Haven't seen that occur for two URLs. We got 100% the same indexing for the top 10 URLs. So the 10 top 10 URLs for one were the same top 10 for the other, but two of the top 10 rankings were the same for both keywords. So we got the same page one URLs, different order. All right. We look at the top 20, it's 85%, so largely the same URLs indexed, but only 25%. So it actually got better for the rankings there. But you remember last time when I said remember the 0, 5, and 3%? Well, these are very different ranking values here. So sometimes the rankings are more consistent and other times they aren't. And that's a double-digit difference in that consistency. And so, here, I start to think, okay, well, the same pages, again, largely getting indexed, but the rankings are quite different. So again, it's suggesting that we need to tune for both. So now I'm going to try something else. Let's do, instead of plumbers, let's do plumbing. So we got Seattle plumber, Seattle plumbing. Okay, so now before the last two examples, the unique URLs between both keywords were 117. Now it's 129. So now there's more URLs different between the two. Now page one still largely the same. Page two still kind of the same amount. They were 85 before. But when we get across the whole top 100, this percentage is lower. So it looks like, outside of page one, page two, there's a lot more differences in what's showing up. When we look at the rankings, like these are, really strong numbers. So page one, page two, they're kind of doing some decent consistency on ranking the same pages. Now, one thing that a lot of people theorize about Google and their natural language processing is that they're doing a thing called word stemming. And when you have words like plumbers, plumber, plumbing, word stemming means you cut the word down to its root word, which would be plum. And so, let me retype it. It's got a visual bug. Okay. So we're going to compare Seattle plumber to its word stem equivalent of Seattle plum. Now, in theory, if Google is doing word stemming, these two should be equivalent queries. $173. That's very different. So we're 60% the same on page 1 indexing, 40% the same when we go out to page 2, 25% the same overall. So that's a very different result set. And the rankings, yeah, they're not the same. They're different rankings. So, I mean, this indicates to me that those theories that Google is doing word stemming with natural language processing look completely false. And then, of course, the classic that started all of this, Plumber Seattle. So Seattle Plumber, Plumber Seattle, page 1 has all the same URLs, 100% the same URLs, but only 3 of them are in the same spot. So the rankings between Seattle Plumber and Plumber Seattle are different. And you get 95% of the same URLs in the top 20, but only 30% with the same rankings. So again, they're ranking differently. And overall 7% across the top 100. So, this is telling me that Google is largely selecting the same pages for these very similar cases. So for indexing, they're kind of being treated the same. They're picking the same pages for indexing. They're just ranking them very differently. So, if Google says, "Oh, it's all the same," maybe they just mean in that indexing part, because it's not the same in the rankings. All right, let's look at something else. So if we have, let's go ecom. So let's see what we can learn about ecom problems. So if we have a puppy t-shirt, but we also know that that keyword is almost evenly divided with puppy hyphen or puppy t hyphen shirt. And we want to know, does Google know that T space shirt is the same as T hyphen shirt? And that's a common problem with words, especially in ecom. So we'll run that. All right. So this is interesting. 100 unique URLs between the two, 90% the same, 90+% the same across all three. 90% the same rankings on page 1, 65 on up to page 2, and then 23% overall. That's probably the best ranking data we've got so far. So this one is interesting. This one looks like Google is trying to treat T space shirt and T hyphen shirt the same.
Ted, did you try when you were experimenting around with this, eliminating the space and just having t-shirt as one, no space, just that versus the hyphen?
Nope, I didn't. But that's another valid variation. So let's try that as well. Let me make sure it's still going okay.
First day of the box, and I broke it. I'm not getting invited back.
Well, let me just restart it. Again, it's just a prototype tool. So we go puppy t-shirt, and then puppy t-shirt. All right, halfway there. And it's ready. Okay, so wow, this very different than that last one. So now there's 150 unique URLs between the two searches. And before it was 90 plus on all three. Now it's 80, 70, 47 on the indexing. And then the rankings went to shit. Totally different rankings.
So
So
not the same.
t-shirt, all one word, very different than both t-shirt and t-space shirt. Another interesting one is acronyms. So if we went best SEO software and best search engine optimization software. So does Google know that SEO means search engine optimization? You know, we would all largely assume the answer to that is yes. Waiting on the queries to come back. And you know what the difference is it's a live demo. Let me restart that again. It should be done by now. All right. Okay, half done. And finished. All right, so 43 more URLs when you look at unique URLs. You know, not too bad on the indexing between the two, but the rankings are very different. So, you know, it looks like Google's making an effort to pull the same pages, but they're being ranked in very different orders. So again, you know, if you were going for this keyword, you would want to optimize for probably both cases if you thought people were searching for the long form. And I'm skeptical as to whether or not people would do that. Now, what people might do is they might change out the sentiment keyword. So top SEO software. So does Google canonicalize these sentiment keywords? Oh, it already came up. No wonder. Okay. So we have 125 unique URLs between both keywords. 80, 80, 75. So, 20% different in the what pages are being indexed. And then we look at the rankings, and overall, 5% the same rankings, and only 2 of page 1 and 4 of the top 20 are the same. So Google's, it looks like they're largely trying to pull the same pages, but put them in a different order. And so again, this keeps telling us the same story, that even if they're very close keywords, if your goal is rank position, you can't just tune for one and kind of hope for the best on the others, because you won't rank as well. You're going to rank differently for the other keyword you don't tune for. So if it's important to rank for both of these, you're probably going to have to tune for both of these. And there's probably a rational limit to how many keywords you can tune for on a page. So, if you're tuning, the page for 7% keyword density for this word and 7% keyword density for that word, that's 14% keyword density overall on the page. Your page is no longer English. So you're going to have to make some hard choices when you try to do, one page being optimally tuned for multiple keywords. There's a question: which software are you using? I'm just showing one of the prototypes I have in SEO Tool Lab. I invent lots of different software. Not all of them see the light of day as products, and this is one of them, and I thought I'd show it and pay homage to the analysis that Lee did, that kicked off the existence of this tool. But I don't think you need this software. What you're learning here is that when people say, "Oh, Google treats Seattle Plumber and Plumber Seattle the same," well, yes and no. Yes, they kind of index, largely the same pages for, the top 50, top 100. But no, they put them in a completely different order. They're ranking them differently. Let's see, what's another good one to do? Lee, do you have anything you want me to look at?
Well, I always like the, let's go back to ecom and sterling silver amethyst bracelet and amethyst bracelet sterling silver. There's enough words in there. It's not just 2 words like Seattle plumber. Let's see what happens if we shake up the order a wee bit. Yeah, you don't want to compare it to top SEO software.
Okay, just double checking my typing before I run the report. All right, halfway done. There we go. Okay, so 115, not too bad on the indexing. 100% of page 1 was the same, and 75% of the top 20, 84% overall. So that's pretty good. Google looked at those 2 searches and said, yeah, we probably need to use largely the same pages. So, and this might come down to whether or not most of these pages are using exact matches or partial matches. And I bet you if you dove in into it deeply, I bet you most of the pages are largely using these words, but not together.
Mm-hmm.
And when most of the pages do that, then they all kind of get picked again. So like an opportunity here would be to use the exact match that would normally get you some advantage. And so if you found that these had roughly equivalent search volumes, then you'd probably want to tune them about the same on the page. What's interesting here is 100% of page one, exact same rankings. And that's really interesting. Same URLs, same rank positions. But you get to page 2 and beyond, and it all goes to shit. They're in a different order. So that's interesting to me, but again, it's not surprising. Like, we keep seeing this theme where having extremely similar keywords that are almost, the same thing, synonyms of each other. Google picks largely the same pages, but then when it comes time to rank them, it's like the on page is completely off for one or the other. And so, it just begs the question that if you're tuning for multiple keywords, you're going to have to get aggressive and actually tune the on page for multiple keywords. What else can we try? Kyle, you're with us. What are your thoughts on all of this craziness?
First of all, I'm impressed that you're able to spell amethyst live. I'm pretty sure I can't do that. Never would have happened on a live show. So I guess the question is, like, on some of the ones where it was like, Seattle Plum, I don't think there's anything that anybody's really trying to rank for, but let's say you were, what would you do with that information? Like, what would you do? And would you run 2 different core reports and then try to tune for both if you needed them on the same page, or would you create 2 different pages?
I think the answer to that is yes. I think there are going to be times where you just want to rank for both on one page. And I think that's a harder road to go if you're trying to be number one for both, because you have to have extremely aggressive tunings for both. So in those cases where you're trying to be more aggressive with the tuning, you may have to break it out into separate pages. Because again, if like the keyword density, oftentimes, for a low competition keyword, you'll be fighting people, with 2.2% keyword density. And that's easy to do, that's not too bad. But when you're fighting in these high competition niches where people are driving up the keyword density to 6, 7, 8%, and you try to do 6, 7, 8% on multiple keywords, I mean, your content stops being English. And so that makes it very hard to optimally tune a single page for multiple keywords. So that kind of suggests that, maybe you can do 2, maybe you can do 3 keywords optimally, depending upon, what that keyword density requirement is going to be. But then beyond that, you have to start doing dedicated pages.
Do you have a gut feeling after you've run this a few times on what percentage there on indexing or rankings would be indicative of 2 different pages?
I think this data wouldn't tell you that. I think you'd have to run, Pop or Cora or some other tool to give you the degree of competitive tuning. Because if you find out that people are doing, skyscraper content and they have, 8% keyword density and they have a 10,000, word count, it's gonna change it if you're doing, product pages on an online store where people have a 200 word count page and they mention their keyword twice, that's going to be much easier to do one page. So I think you'll have to look at each situation on a case by case basis. But the real takeaway here is that, if you think that Seattle Plumber and Plumber Seattle are treated the same by Google, well, they are in the sense that Google will, to about 80% will pick the same pages for both. But you're generally wrong on how they're going to rank. They're both going to rank completely different pages. And so I think if both of the keyword variations are important to you, you're gonna have to, make some hard choices. You're gonna have to do your keyword research and find out which one is the best opportunity for the business. Should you even bother, tuning for the other variation? For example, if we did yoga pants, I doubt hardly anybody searches for pants yoga. It's just not how people think generally. So, one of those would make a lot of sense to tune for as a primary keyword, and the other, might be worth mentioning so that you're there. And the keyword difficulty may change between these variations. You might find that one of these is really easy to break into and the other one isn't. So there might be some easy traffic to get by looking at the inversions and seeing if they have volume. Because if you can't get into yoga pants, maybe getting your page ranked for pants yoga at least gets you some sales, gets you some targeted traffic.
Sure. Thane wants to see Britney Spears versus Spears Britney. That's kind of interesting.
With the comma?
That's what he wrote. Britney Spears versus Spears, comma, Britney.
He's telling everybody his age.
What should he go on with, like Doja Cat and Cat, comma, Doja? to be hippin' with it.
All right, so Britney Spears, comma, Britney. Now he had some variation in the capitalization, but I'm not going that far. And it's half done. And complete. So 129 unique URLs between the two keywords. 80% down to 67% for indexing. What percentage of the URLs are the same between the two. And then the ranking went to shit in a hurry. So they're ranked differently.
I'm kind of surprised by that. I don't know how many people do the library search, Spears, comma, Britney. You'd think you'd want to go Britney Spears on that.
Yeah. And, it even works that way with the geolocation. So that DUI lawyer Los Angeles and DUI lawyer LA. All right, it's half done. There we go. So largely the same pages, but they rank different. So I mean, it's not terrible. 3 of the top 10 were the same rankings, 7 of the top 20, but 11% the same rankings overall. So definitely, seeing better consistency for rankings elsewhere. And it looks like Google's trying to do the right thing here. Like it's pulling, largely, 80% plus the same pages between the two, but it's just ranking them differently. And so that's the real takeaway, is that when you see, oh, I don't need to do, a page for DUI lawyer LA because I already have DUI lawyer Los Angeles. Well, if you care about those keywords, you're going to rank differently for them if you don't tune for them both. That's the takeaway, is that Google's treating them the same for indexing, which is fantastic, but it's ranking them differently. And, my suspicion, we haven't proven everything here, but my suspicion is the on page for one of these is generally going to be tuned to a different competitive degree than the other. So you'll go out there and you'll find that most of this cohort is optimized for one way more than it's optimized for the other. And that's why these rankings are so different. And it makes sense, if exact match is part of the algorithm, you would expect the ranking to change because of different levels of exact match tuning. And people often will only do exact match tuning for like one keyword on a page. They won't do a ton for the other variant keywords. So yeah, anything else anyone would like to see? Because otherwise we will call it a show. Let me check YouTube. Let's see. Keith is telling us to leave Brittany alone. And he did the common typo of her name. That's another thing we should probably check, is typos. What's a classic typo that Google should understand? And while we think of that, let me show you this one. Microsoft stock quote and MSFT stock quote. Okay, so exact same search intent. All we're doing is swapping a company brand entity for a ticker symbol entity. Google should be able to recognize both of these and disambiguate them and come to the same conclusions about these, right? Everybody agree? These should be the same query? All right, half done. All right. We can already tell that there's a different number of results. So it's not looking good, and I haven't even scrolled up. Okay, so one of them got 87, the other got 99. 113 unique URLs. And so we got 80% the same indexing, same URLs on page 1. 85, it actually improved for page 2. And then 84% overall. So this is kind of consistent with the story we've seen so far. Google tries to use the same set of URLs for the two different queries. But then the rankings are different. So half of page 1 is different. And 70% of the top 20 are different, and then 9% overall the same rankings. So even though these should canonicalize to be the same search, they're still ranking differently, even though they're 80% plus using the same URLs.
Thane threw out an interesting idea. Because these two overlap so well together, replace MSFT with Microsoft with two Fs. So it's a misspelling that
Oh, yeah, there we go.
And these two should overlap.
Or maybe I should put a space in there,
Sure.
because I think that'll be even a more common one. And it's half done. Okay, closer this time. 91, 89, 92 unique URLs. So that's interesting because that's almost exactly the same URL set between the two.
Right.
So the typo correction is interesting. And the reason this is really interesting is because Google probably corrected this search. Because when you go to Google, let me open a new window and let me search for it. Micro space soft stack quote. It does this thing. It says showing results for the corrected one. So it probably corrected the typo and gave us the equivalent keyword. So now we're just seeing the normal variance between running the keyword twice. So it gave us the correct one twice, and this is the variation of just this keyword.
So let's try it with the two Fs and see if it does the same thing. It's a less common, but let's see how good Google is at correcting a misspelling.
Okay, I predict it's gonna do the same thing. But we can run it. Let's run it for giggles.
All right, you and your data. So we had 91 and 89. Let's see what we got now.
All right, it's half done. Okay, looks like we got the same number of results. So a little bit of difference between them. And look at this. Exactly the same in the top 20, 90+% overall. I'm pretty confident Google is just correcting to the first version and we're comparing it to itself. So I guess the statement, does Google treat typo variations the same? That answer appears to be true. So typos, understood typos of Microsoft will be treated the same as correctly spelled Microsoft. So there is a case where Google's statements are true, and it's with typos. But maybe not, because the rankings are still fairly different when you get further down. It's definitely true for page 1, though. Let's see, there's a comment. Although in Google Search Console query reports, they are provided as separate terms, not auto-corrected. Now, is that the typos are provided as separate terms? Yeah. So Google's reporting on the origin keyword, not necessarily on the delivered result set keyword. Let's see, we have some more comments here. DUI lawyer Los Angeles. Do the results get skewed with all the marketing stuff Google puts on a search result? The ads No, I'm going through the Google Search API with this tool, and it's very exactly parsing search results only. So the local pack, the ads, and all the other widgets, the image search, news search, all that other stuff isn't a part of it. As I mentioned last night to Kyle on Facebook, my brand name came up with new results. I had building supply shop items with pictures, sports supplies, etc. Only thing that got close was paint strippers. I don't understand the question in that one. Does that ring a bell with you, Kyle, on what that might be about?
Yeah, it's a site for strippers, but wire stripper ads are being shown.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, I forgot. He has a risque website.
It was
So
actually really hilarious. Like the things were like wire strippers, a full body wetsuit, and like electrolyte tabs that you could drop into water where the ads being
yeah,
shown.
we've seen that before, where Google gets confused, between boxing matches for shipping, the art of putting matches in boxes and shipping them versus punching people in the face. Google can get confused, and there's a lot of ambiguity at times, and it sounds like you ran straight into that ambiguity. Another one, I've been noticing plural versus non-plural to be all over the map. Yeah, you can't trust that there's a rule. You can't say, oh, well, the plural form is always going to have more search volume than the singular form. And oftentimes the rule changes from niche to niche. Like when you get to frisbees, people often search for a singular frisbee. They don't often search for plural form. But when you search for coffee mugs, people often search for the plural form instead of the singular form. And so when you're doing your keyword research to figure out where the best opportunity lies for your exact match tuning, you have to go to Google Trends and look at them both ways, because it won't always be the same answer. And Sean is giving us two different variations for his brand. One with the space, one without it. um yeah, offline, Sean, I'll happily run the report for you, see if anything comes out with that, but because it's risque, I won't run it now. um let's see. Does entity match only match on singular? You know, I don't think it does. That's an interesting one. I wonder if I said types of handbag in Google. I don't get the entity carousel, but the second I say types of handbags, well, I also don't get the entity carousel. That's interesting. So the entity carousel used to uh, show up for this, but Google appears to be different. Let's try types of frogs. All right, here it is, the entity carousel. So now we have that. Now let's try singular form, and we still get it. So it knows the plural and the singular. In this case, it demonstrated it, because here it's singular and it still pulled up the plural entity. So that was a good question, though. I didn't know the answer. Let's see. All right, I guess that's it. Is there any other keywords anyone wants to see before we go? Last chance keyword. Close out the show. Kyle, how about you?
No, I'm good.
You're good.
The misspelling ones were totally fine. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, everyone. I hope you enjoyed getting a sneak peek at some tools, some SEO tools that'll probably never see the light of day. But there's still a lot to be learned from it, in that, the main takeaway, when people say, oh, Google will treat those two keywords the same, just remember, they might for indexing, but they probably won't for the rankings, and you'd have to tune for them separately for the ranking part. Last question here. Do technical issues on unused pages like About Us affect the overall site traffic? It's a publisher site with about 200 articles. Well, the thing I'd say about that is generally no, as long as there aren't infinite crawls or duplicate content or cannibalization, those types of issues. Usually About Us pages don't do that. But there's this nagging suspicion in the back of my head, because when Google Search Console got relaunched into its new incarnation, there was all this capability that was in there about reporting on JavaScript errors, reporting on network errors, reporting on style errors and schema errors. And they were amassing all of the line by line errors out of the console window, and they were reporting them on a URL by URL basis in Google Search Console. So if you can imagine the size of that database, like just the size of indexing, keywords and URLs, that's kind of small in comparison to logging every error on every page across 200 trillion pages. And that's what we were seeing in Search Console. Now, not all 200 trillion are in Search Console, far from it, but even the fact that they're doing it just for the Search Console ones is ridiculously expensive. And they took that away. They took away a lot of that error reporting that they had early on. Now, I don't think it's gone. I think we're just not privy to it anymore. And so, they're doing something with errors. And so when you start talking about technical issues, well, Google's tracking them for some reason. And, if I had to guess, I would say that maybe they think it's an internal measurement of like investment. People who invest in their websites would have lower error counts. And so if it's some sort of quality indicator, or how hard are you trying to make this a good site, maybe that works against you. But is that proven? No, we haven't proven that. So it's just a pie in the sky theory of why it might be worth addressing. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone. We will see you next week.